Another round of applause, everyone. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but you are a genius at what you do. Honestly, doesn't she? So before we start, I just want to say like how last minute getting my outfit was, and her eye is so good. She literally managed to pick something, give it to Kaden, and when I put it on, it was as if it was tailor-made for me. Like looking at this now, you won't know that literally 3 seconds before I put it on, I'd never seen it. Open the door, put it on, and look at this. Like I've never felt this good. So thank you for your eye and your creativity. Now, one thing that is beautiful about this week is TWYG has managed to curate a very eclectic list of designers. So I think of you as sort of like the master of textiles, because you manage to mix everything, and so you work with a lot of texture. And I'm really curious to know, really, and get to the bottom of this. Why do you love texture so much? How do you come around? Because I'm assuming there's a lot of collaboration that gets to the final product.
Good afternoon, everyone. So in terms of fabric, I think in this digital age that we all live in, and we're always on a screen and everything's always flat, I'm always drawn to texture. I think also I collect art, and I'm always drawn to painting and sculpture and things that are made by hand. And I think that kind of love is filtered through into our collections. I think textile is first and foremost the starting point of any garment. That's what you have on your body, but it's what makes everything. And then how those textiles basically translate into shape, how every textile has a personality. I think in South Africa, we sometimes limited in sourcing a lot of fabrics from a lot of places, but the beauty in that is that we can actually work with what we have, and it forces you to be more creative, because it's like, this is what you have available, what can you do with it? So in our case, we love combining different fabrics from different sources, and in that mix you kind of create something that's very unique. We work a lot with reclaimed fabrics, so couture fabrics, and also reclaimed fabrics from South Africa, because we used to have this huge textile manufacturing industry in the 70s and 80s that no longer exists, but it's busy being revived through a lot of South African designers that are again supporting local manufacturing and local craftsmen. To us, it's also very exciting to collaborate with other artisans, because I think that's the one thing that sets South Africa and Africa apart from the world fashion industry, is the fact that we are so good with our hands. I think it makes it's immediately different from something that you can have from Italy, which is beautifully, luxuriously produced, but it's still produced in a manufacturing environment. Whereas in South Africa, we have all these thousands of hands that can do such beautiful things. So a big part of our brand is working with these craftsmen, and the creative process is so beautiful to work with someone, and together you come up with something new. At the end of the day, one person cannot have a brand by themselves. You can have a concept, you can have an idea, but it takes so many different people behind the scenes to start with the innovation of the textile, and then from there, how the textiles get cut or draped or turned into a new garment, and then the handwork that goes on top. So the full value chain is very, very important, which is often missed. So yeah, that's us.
Amazing. And I didn't want to stop you there. Literally, I could listen to you talk all day, but you touch on something that I think Wanda also touched on yesterday, which is the sense of community, which really needs to be brought back within the fashion industry. So you basically are echoing the same ideals of Africa, which is the sense of Ubuntu, where you have to work together, and by banding up together, you can actually make more. So tell me a little bit about the actual raw materials, because I assume it can't be easier working with the materials that you have to work with, and yet you are so determined that you will stick to raw materials, and they must be local. So tell me a little bit about that process and how it comes about for you.
So the spirit of Ubuntu, yes, stronger together.
Yeah.
We really can. I think as South Africans, again, if we want to position ourselves in the world and we want to be relevant, it's much easier to come together as a collective and be like, we stand for certain things. We stand for very strong values in the fashion industry, which completely sets us apart already from what a lot of brands are doing for example, in Europe or elsewhere in the world. And if 6 or 10 of us all communicate that from Africa, we do things in a slower way, our ethics and our values in terms of sourcing, the way that we work with people, if we all communicate that same message, we can very easily actually make a big change, which is amazing. So back to working with South African raw materials, like we've got a close partnership with Cape Wools and Moe South Africa to basically go back to the provenance of fabric. Where does wool come from? I've got a 2-year-old son. It's like, where does chicken come from?
Yeah.
You know, most people are so there's a disconnect between the origin of things, and that's also actually where this collection concept started. Like, what is our shared origin stories? Where does it all start? And for example, with Cape Wools and with Moe South Africa, they work with a program called Originates. So it means that people out in the field, like sampling wool, sampling mohair from the actual farm, which gets like coded with a QR code, which can trace back the actual wool to the actual farm in the Karoo. And I think what sets the South African industry apart again is the fact that it's so sustainably focused. So the ethics and the values on those farms and as an industry is really focused to be better, to create a better future. So that's very interesting in terms of the origins of our raw materials. Again, also the ostrich industry, for example, it's a very sustainable source of raw materials because all the different elements are used. So there's very little wastage of anything with that regard. So to me, it's just nice to actually celebrate and work with what South Africa has to offer, which is a lot.
I think there's a lot that we have here that we take for granted, and I think for a long time, perhaps designers at your scale or at your level had always felt like they needed to look to Europe, and so to know that collectively now you're actually starting to look at, well, even the ideals and the concepts of like, you know, being more sustainable, it's how it was always done here. It's at some point it just kind of like got lost, and then we focused too much on how it was done in more successful industries. So I'm happy to hear this. Can we just share the love and go to the other room for the final question? And because when I was reading it, I was getting a sense of looking back, but also looking forward.
So the collection is called Retrace, Rememory, Reset, and then Reculture. So to me, it's really like it started with the origins of things, like thinking of our origin stories and trying to find a point where instead of thinking you're a Muslim, I'm Afrikaans, you're from Italy, you're from China, instead of thinking of what separates us through these stories, is what brings us together. And there's always this common thread when you look at origin stories, whether it's like ancestral, whether it's religious, there's this common thread that you find all over the world. And that common thread somehow always points up, it's like we come from the sky. So the starting point of this collection was coming from the sky. The colors and the materials were very much interplanetary stars, galaxies. I don't know who saw the James Webb Telescope documentaries on Netflix, but there's so much coming from the sky. So this idea of origins and the provenance and how we can actually go back and find the provenance of things, know where things come from. You know, I encourage people to actually look inside of their clothes and see, like, what is it made of? Where is it made? And then to challenge that, it's like if it's made in a space where you know people might not be taken good care of in the factories, or if the fabric, you know, is just a cheap polyester, sorry to say it like that. You know, what is the consequences of that? So I'm encouraging people basically to retrace, remember where did it come from, remember where things come from, and then reset. So like, think afresh, start new, reset your computer, and then reculture. Together we can create something very beautiful and optimistic.
Amazing, beautifully said. Thank you so much. What I'm taking away from this is another idea that luxury actually has to be about consciousness. And I think that you summed it up so beautifully, like a sense of provenance and looking at the details and just maybe slowing down, which again, I guess mirrors the whole idea of slow fashion. Stop, open your garment, look where it comes from, understand the threads and the source of it, and realize that we're all connected somehow. So thank you so much, Lezanne, and we can't wait to see the second half of the show because we've only seen just half of it now. And so I'll send you back to go prepare the rest, and we're ready to be in all. Thank you.